One type of hormones help in the growth of the bones. Another type of hormones help to regulate the calcium in the blood. Okay, that is called calcium homeostasis. So, which hormones work on the bones and help them to grow? Growth hormone, very simple. Its name is telling you growth hormone, thyroid hormone, and sex hormones, testosterone, estrogen. Now, growth hormone comes from the pituitary gland. In the brain you have pituitary gland, and pituitary gland has two parts, anterior and posterior. So this is like the pituitary gland, and it has two lobes. This is anterior lobe and this is posterior lobe. So growth hormone comes from the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland, and this hormone works on the bones and the skeletal muscles, mostly works on the bones and the skeletal muscles of the body mainly, and help in the growth of those structures. So more growth hormone secretion means the body grows faster. Make sense? So if during the growth of the body, that means before puberty or around the puberty, when the body grows in childhood, during that time normal amount of growth hormone secretion is important for the normal growth of the body. Make sense? So normal amount of growth hormone must be released. But if in someone's body during the growth of the body, growth hormone secretion is more than normal, then the bones will grow faster and the person will grow very fast and will become very big. Make sense? And that condition is called giantism or gigantism, also called giantism. Okay, due to increased growth hormone secretion during the growth of the body, early part of life. If the growth hormone secretion is less than normal, then the person's body will grow slow, and the person will remain small, and that condition is called dwarfism. So dwarfism is due to decreased secretion of this hormone during the growth, and gigantism or giantism is due to increased secretion of growth hormone from the anterior pituitary. Now, if this hormone secretion occurs more after the growth of the body is completed, during the growth, your growth hormone secretion was normal, so your body has grown normally. Now at adulthood, if suddenly it happens due to sometime tumor or something, if growth hormone secretion occurs more at adulthood, then what will happen? The body bones are already fused. The ossification is completed, right? So in that case, what will happen? Few bones of your body will grow in width, not in length, but in width. Which bones particularly we see? The bones of the fingers, facial bones. These bones get thicker. Okay, so you will see the person's fingers are thick, facial bones are thicker, so the face looks bigger. Protruded mandible grows and looks like it's coming out, so that is called protruded mandible. So those are the signs if the growth hormone secretion occurs more at adulthood. and that condition is called acromegaly. Okay. Acromegaly occurs due to increased growth hormone secretion in adults. What are the signs? Thick fingers, thick facial bones, protruded mandible. Another thing happens, the tongue. You remember I said growth hormone also works on the muscles, right? Skeletal muscles, and the tongue becomes thick. So when the person talks, like it's like slow. So the tongue also gets bigger and thicker. Thyroid hormone is another hormone that works to increase the growth of the bone, and this hormone doesn't work directly. It modulates the function of the growth hormone. So it enhances the function of the growth hormone, and then growth hormone works more, right, on the bones, and the bones grow faster.
So does it regulate the function of the pituitary?
It regulates the function of the growth hormone directly by combining with so it's like molecular combination, and that enhances the function, not stimulating the pituitary. Okay, so working directly on the hormone. Sex hormone, testosterone and estrogens also help in the growth of the bones. You all know that when the sex hormones start to release at puberty, right? Just before puberty, the people, young kids grow faster suddenly, right? You have seen that young kids suddenly grows. If you see like after 2 years or 3 years gap, you see the kids got bigger. So that is due to the secretion of sex hormones in the body. Okay, so those are three hormones: growth hormone, thyroid hormone, and sex hormone. Stimulate the growth of the bones. Which hormones help in the regulation of calcium in the blood, or help in calcium homeostasis? One thyroid hormone that is called calcitonin. Calcitonin lowers the blood calcium. So thyroid hormone calcitonin decreases or lowers the blood calcium. Okay. Parathyroid hormone comes from parathyroid gland. Remember, there are 4 to 8 tiny glands behind the thyroid. I talked about that in my first lecture. 4 to 8 in number, tiny glands attached to the back of the thyroid gland. Those are the parathyroid glands, and they secrete the hormone called PTH, parathyroid hormone or parathormone. That hormone does opposite, increases the blood calcium. Okay, so thyroid hormone calcitonin it comes from thyroid, right? Lowers the blood calcium. Parathyroid hormone called PTH that increases the blood calcium. So opposite action. Okay. Vitamin D, although it is not a hormone, this chemical vitamin D increases the growth. Vitamin D increases the absorption of calcium from the food in the intestine. So after you eat the food, it goes to your intestine, and where the vitamin D works and increases the absorption of calcium from the food into the blood. So more calcium is taken into the blood from the food in your intestine. If more vitamin D, more absorption of calcium occurs. Make sense? So more calcium enters into the blood level of calcium goes up. Is it clear? So those are the hormones and chemicals help in the regulation of calcium. Now, how the thyroid hormone calcitonin decreases the blood calcium. We know that calcitonin lowers the blood calcium. How? Calcitonin works on two organs of your body, bones and kidneys. So calcitonin works on the bones and the kidneys. On bones, calcitonin does what? Stimulate the osteoclasts. You must remember, osteoclasts are what type of cell? Bone cell. Anybody? Small or giant? Big and multinucleated, right? Many mitochondria, I talked about that in last class. So osteoclasts are giant cells, bone cells, and they love to what? Destroy the matrix of the bone. Remember I said in last class. So osteoclasts love to destroy the matrix of the bone. So calcitonin, calcium comes out from the bone and enters into the blood. So blood level of calcium will go up. Make sense? So actually what happens, calcitonin inhibits the osteoclast, not stimulate, inhibits the osteoclastic activity. So osteoclastic activity will be inhibited or suppressed. So what will happen? Matrix will not be destroyed. Osteoclasts will sleep, will not work. So no activity of osteoclast will not break any matrix of the bone, and that will lower the calcium. Normally, remember, normally osteoclasts work in some extent because those are the cells in the bone, right? So continuously, you remember I said in last class, bones are being destroyed, right? And being formed. That is the remodeling, right? So in your body, osteoclasts are working continuously and destroying some matrix, and new matrix is being formed. So now if you inhibit those osteoclasts, they will not break the matrix, right? So calcium will not enter into the blood, so blood level of calcium will go down. Okay, so that is the way calcitonin works on the bones. Kidneys, very simple. Calcitonin will excrete calcium out through the urine. So very simple. Excrete calcium through urine. So it will work on the kidney and will let the calcium get out through the urine. So how calcitonin let the calcium get out? What happens inside the kidney, just know that inside the kidney reabsorption occurs. That means reabsorption means, this word you will find a lot in future. Reabsorption means taken back into the body. Taken back into the body. So that happens in your kidney when the chemicals enter into the kidney. Kidney reabsorbs the chemicals. That means take the chemicals back into the body and let the water and some toxic chemicals get out. But most of the important chemicals are taken back. That means reabsorption occurs inside the kidney. Now what happens? Calcitonin stops the reabsorption of calcium, which is very important chemical, you know that, in your body. But calcitonin does what? Stops or prevents reabsorption of calcium. So calcium is not taken back into the body. Make sense? So we'll get out with the urine. So if more calcium gets out or excretes out from the body, calcium level in the blood will go down. Okay, so very simple. Just think that calcitonin lowers the blood calcium. So what it should do? Keep the calcium in the body or let it get out? Let it get out, right? If calcium gets out, just think very simple. If calcium gets out from the body with your urine, then blood level of calcium will go down, right? So you already know that calcitonin lowers the blood calcium, so it should not take it back. It should let it get out. Is it clear? Did you get it? Okay. So just start to think very simple that what's the action? Calcitonin lowers the calcium, right? So it should let the calcium get out through the kidney. It should inhibit the osteoclasts in the bone. So bone osteoclasts will not break the matrix. Calcium will not come out from the bone. So those are two actions how calcitonin lowers the calcium in the blood. Now, the blood concentration of calcium should always be, calcium ion concentration should be 9 to 11 milligram per deciliter of blood. That is the concentration of calcium in the blood, and this must be maintained, very important. Okay, so that's why those hormones work to regulate the calcium in the blood are very important. Okay, so we already know that calcitonin lowers the calcium. Another hormone, parathyroid hormone, that increases the calcium in the blood. How? Parathyroid hormone works on three organs: bones, kidneys, as well as intestine. Okay, so these two are same organs, and additional is intestine. Since parathyroid hormone increases the calcium in the blood, its action on the bones and kidneys are just opposite of calcitonin, because we know that calcitonin does what? Lowers the calcium. Remember, calcitonin lowers the calcium, right? Parathyroid hormone does what? Increases. Opposite, right? So action will be just opposite on the kidneys, on the bones. So parathyroid hormone increases osteoclast activity, right? You remember calcitonin inhibited, parathyroid hormone stimulates the osteoclasts in the bone. So osteoclasts will do what? Break the matrix, right? Destroy the matrix more than normal. Is it clear? Yeah. So from the matrix, calcium will come out and will enter into the blood. So blood level of calcium will go up. Increases the calcium in the blood. Okay? Clear? Yeah. Okay. Now kidneys. Just think that parathyroid hormone increases the calcium in the blood. So it will do what? Increase the reabsorption. So reabsorption means taken back. So parathyroid hormone will not let the calcium get out through the urine, will retain the calcium from the urine. That is called reabsorption, taken back into the body. So blood level of calcium will go up. So on the kidneys, increases reabsorption of calcium. That means taken back of calcium into the body, right? So blood level of calcium will go up. So these two actions are just opposite of calcitonin, right? Calcitonin lowers and parathyroid increases. On the intestine, calcitonin doesn't work on the intestine, but parathyroid hormone does. Parathyroid hormone increases the absorption of calcium from the food you eat. Very simple. Increases the absorption of calcium from where? The food you eat. Make sense? That means more calcium will enter into the blood level of calcium will go up. So, the intestine increases absorption of calcium. From where? From the food you eat. And how? You remember a few minutes ago when I talked about the hormones regulate the blood calcium, I said vitamin D. So more vitamin D means more absorption of calcium from the food in the intestine. So this hormone, parathyroid hormone, increases the vitamin D activities. So vitamin D will work more. And what's the function of vitamin D? Absorption of calcium from the food in the intestine. It will work through the vitamin D. Here you see the action of parathyroid hormone. Kidney, bone and intestine. I mentioned that maintaining the calcium concentration within this narrow range is extremely important. Calcium concentration must be between 9 to 11 milligram per deciliter of blood. If the concentration goes below 9, that is dangerous. If the concentration increases above 11, that is also not good. So that's why it should be in that narrow range. Now, lower calcium concentration in the blood is called hypocalcemia. Hypo means low, right? You know that. Hypocalcemia. And if the calcium concentration in the blood is high, that is called hypercalcemia. You will hear this term often when you will be a nurse or medical practitioner. So hypo and hypercalcemia. Both are not good. Could be dangerous and can even kill the person. Okay. First, why calcium is important in your body? This chemical is extremely important because calcium is necessary for transmission of nerve signal. Nerve signal transmission is very important in your body to carry the information or command. So nerve signal transmission is helped by calcium. Muscle contraction. Calcium is essential for the muscle contraction. So lack of calcium will cause what? Weakness of the muscle, right? Extreme weakness of the muscle can work. No contraction. Blood coagulation. In your blood, the calcium is present, and calcium is one of 4 essential factors for coagulation or blood clot. There are 4 factors or 4 components in your blood. Those are essential for the blood clot or blood coagulation. Calcium is one of those 4. Why those are called essential? Because all 4 are needed for blood coagulation, right? Essential for blood coagulation. Lack of any of those 4 will delay the coagulation of blood or may even stop the coagulation or blood clot formation. So calcium is one of those 4 essential factors. Secretion by the glands and nerve cells. So secretion of hormones and neurotransmitters from the nerve endings or nerve, neurotransmitters are released or secreted, and from the glands that hormones are secreted. So for the secretion of the glands and neurotransmitters you need calcium. How is just think that this is a gland, and inside the gland you have the vesicles. and vesicles contain the hormones. Okay, so calcium does what? Help in rupture of these vesicles. So the chemical will be released. So calcium helps in rupture of the vesicles. Okay, hormone containing cells or vesicles. Cell division is also helped by calcium. So those are very important functions you see in your body, and all those functions are helped by calcium. Okay, so here this is now you will understand. You see that blood calcium concentration is 9 to 11 milligram per 100 milliliter of blood. 100 milliliter means 1 deciliter, 1/10 of a liter, right? So same thing, 1 deciliter means 100 milliliter. So that is the concentration. Now if the you see in the right side, if the concentration goes down, then what will happen? The parathyroid hormone will be released, because we know that PTH increases the blood calcium. So parathyroid hormone will release more parathyroid hormone or PTH, and that will stimulate the osteoclasts. You see in the left side, those cells are osteoclasts, and they will break the matrix more. Calcium will come out from the matrix of the bone more, will enter into the blood. Blood level of calcium will go up again. Okay, that is just one way. Another is working on the kidneys, and another is on the intestine through vitamin D. Okay, so that's how the regulation of calcium occurs in the body. And fracture. Common types of fracture are comminuted fracture. This is one commonly seen fracture. It occurs more in older people. Okay, old age people get this kind of fracture more. I see a lot of flies.
Yeah.
Need to talk to the people. Okay, so what's the nature of comminuted fracture? You see multiple fracture in one location. You know, at old age the bone gets fragile, easily breakable. So what happens when fracture occurs? Multiple fracture occurs at the same location, and that is comminuted fracture. Compression fracture. This occurs due to vertical pressure this way. If the pressure falls vertically on the bone, that crushes the bone. So if someone jumps from very high height, then the vertical pressure falls on the vertebral column. You know, if you land from the height on the ground, then this kind of pressure, right, falls on your spine or vertebral column. So that can crush the vertebrae this way. So that is compression type fracture. Spiral fracture. In spiral fracture, you will see the fracture, single fracture, but it is oblique, like this. The break is like this, not transverse, like this. That occurs due to twisted pressure, like this. If I hold the bone like this and twist it like this, that will cause spiral fracture. Epiphyseal fracture. You must remember, just in last class, I showed you the ossification, endochondral ossification, and at that time I told you that after the bone is formed, still a thin plate of cartilage remains as cartilage throughout the life. This is the location that is called epiphyseal plate, hyaline cartilage, will never be converted to bone. That means what? This place is a weak point in your bone, and fracture can easily occur here at the epiphyseal plate. So that is called epiphyseal fracture at the epiphyseal plate location, because that is a thin layer of cartilage there.
So does it only occur in long bones then?
Yes, only occur in long bones, yes. Depressed fracture. If after the fracture the broken piece of bone goes inwards, like best example, if something hits the skull like this, then the broken piece of skull will go inwards, right, towards the brain. If pressure comes from, strike comes from outside, the bone will break and will go inwards. That is the depressed type fracture. Happens more in earthquake. If something falls on your head, or road accident, something hits the skull, that happens. Okay. Green stick type fracture. This fracture occurs mostly in young kids, children. You must remember, I also mentioned this, the flexibility is more, right, in young bones. You can bend more. So young bones will not break easily. When it breaks, many cases what happens, the fracture is not complete fracture. Partial fracture occurs, like here you see, partial fracture occurs, and from that main fracture branches are formed like this, and that's why this fracture is called green stick fracture. Green stick fracture. Healing of the fracture. After the fracture, you know that healing takes place. So, what happens? Just remember the steps. First, when fracture occurs, hematoma is formed. Bleeding occurs, and accumulation of bleeding, that is called hematoma. Because we know that bones are vascular. Bones have blood vessels, right? So the rupture of the blood vessels will cause bleeding, and blood will accumulate, and that is the hematoma. Then between the broken ends, the space gets filled by a soft kind of bone that is called fibrocartilaginous callus. Okay, fibrocartilaginous callus is formed, and it is a fibrocartilage, also called soft bone there in common term. Then that soft bony callus becomes hard, and that is called bony callus. Harder bony callus is formed, and then blood vessels also get repaired, so new blood vessels are formed there, and the last step is remodeling. Now you remember in last class I mentioned, if you want to fix a hole in the wall of your house, you first put the what is that called? Spackle, right? There, right? Then you make it smooth, right? Polish it. So when new bone is formed, that area is still rough, right? After the area is filled by fibrocartilaginous callus and becomes bony callus, still that surface is rough. So osteoclasts work like sandpaper and polishes the surface, and that is called the remodeling. Okay, the surface must get smooth. After fracture, when the bones join, if you have any experience, you will feel that surface is rough and like kind of elevated, is not yet smooth, but gradually it gets smooth. Okay, so that's due to osteoclastic activity destroying the excess bone. So those are the steps of uh, repairing the fracture. A few clinical conditions related to the bones. One is called the rickets. Rickets is the bowing of the leg bones. Bowing of the leg bones. You know, leg bones are tibia and fibula, right? And which one transmits the weight, body weight? Tibia is the bigger one, right? Everybody should know by now. Tibia, right? Fibula supports the muscles mainly. So anyway, rickets occur in young children. Why? Because in young children, bones won't break but will get bent easily. You know that flexibility is more. So if someone suffers from lack of calcium or vitamin D, because you know, if you don't take enough calcium with your food, you will have lower calcium in the body. Make sense? So those kids, they don't get enough calcium rich food. Like if you go to a third world country, right? Kids are not getting enough calcium rich food. So their bones get weak, right? Because calcium is the main chemical in the matrix of the bone, right? And you already know that matrix gives the hardness of the bone, right? Hardness of the bone. We talked about that in last class. And fibers give what? Flexibility, right? So if calcium is lacking, then the bones get weaker, right? And easily can get bent. And that happens in poor countries. Kids, you will often see, if you get out from your house, you'll see many kids, the leg bones are bent or bowed. So that is one reason, lack of calcium. Now, if someone is getting enough calcium in the food but lack of vitamin D, that calcium will not get into the blood, because you remember I just mentioned again and again, vitamin D works on the intestine and helps in what? Absorption of calcium from the food you eat. Make sense? So you are taking calcium rich food, but your body doesn't have vitamin D. Your body is not producing vitamin D. So what will happen? That calcium will not be absorbed from the intestine, right? So blood will not get the calcium. So that is also lack of calcium. So absence or lack of calcium in the food, that means calcium is not present in the food. That is one. Another is calcium is present, but your body doesn't have vitamin D, is not producing. Both can cause the rickets, weakness of the bones, leg bones. Now, why the leg bones get bent? Because you know that body weight is transmitted to the ground through the leg bones, right? Your arm bones are not carrying body weight. So even if they are weak, they will not get bent. But all the time, body weight is passing through the leg bones. So easily. So that's why we see rickets more in young kids, due to vitamin D deficiency or calcium deficiency. We have already talked about dwarfism and gigantism. Those are related to growth hormone secretion. We have already talked about rheumatoid arthritis before. That's the inflammation of soft tissue structures in the joints, right? That causes rheumatoid arthritis. Osteoporosis. Pores or holes in the bone. Osteo means bone and porosis, pores. Many holes are present in the bone, and that happens more in older women, because most of the cases in older women osteoporosis occurs due to lack of sex hormone estrogen. Another condition is called osteomalacia. Osteomalacia is softening of bones due to vitamin D deficiency. Okay, remarkable softening of the bone. The bone gets very soft because of lack of vitamin D. Another condition, osteomyelitis. Osteomyelitis is a very painful condition that occurs due to infection in the bone. Usually bacterial infection, and that infection can come from any other part of the body. So blood will take the microorganism, bacteria, to the bone and from another part of the body, and the bones can get infected, and that is osteomyelitis. Itis is the inflammation, right? Itis. You have heard many itis, right? Meningitis, pharyngitis, tonsillitis, laryngitis, conjunctivitis, right? Nephritis, hepatitis. We can just keep going. So,
So it's infection of the bone and not the bone muscles?
no, bone, but it can come from the muscle around.
Okay.
Yeah. So diabetes is one condition in which the chance of getting osteomyelitis is more because infection can easily spread. So diabetic patients have more chance of getting this condition. You see the spongy bone, the trabeculae, the spikes, upper one is the healthy and lower one is osteoporotic spongy bone. So you see the spongy bone in lower picture got many holes, right? Very weak. From outside you won't be able to realize how weak that bone is because the spongy bone is inside, right? So actually the bone is very weak and fragile. Okay.